Is your name? What college did you go to, and what was your degree?
My name is Ian Nicholas. I went to Syracuse University and I graduated with a broadcast and digital journalism major from the Newhouse School of Communications.
Where do you work now?
I work for the Delmarva Sports Network. Um, excuse me, Delmarva Sports Network in Salisbury, Maryland, which is on the eastern shore of Maryland. We are owned by Draper Media, which is a family-owned company, and we are housed within the TV station called WBOC. So I know that's a lot of organizations there, but I guess the easy answer would be I work for Delmarva Sports Network.
All right, now let's dive deep into your journalism experience. How did you get your first sports broadcasting job, and what led you to Delmarva Sports Network?
Well, specifically for this opportunity at DSN, I really was helped out by somebody who I overlapped with for 1 year, only 1 year at Syracuse. His name was Tim Nolan. Um, and similar position to me. He was a senior at Syracuse when I was a freshman. And he's also from Connecticut originally. I'm from Connecticut originally. So we were somewhat friendly. There was a big age gap when I first got to school, but I got to know Tim a little bit, stay in touch over the years. And this was his first job out of school, being an anchor, reporter, and commentator for Delmarva Sports Network. And I saw this job pop up in a job listing in May of 2025. So the month that I was set to graduate from Syracuse. I interviewed once virtually. Before I interviewed, I reached out to Tim because I saw he was still at the company. And he put in a good word for me with the current sports director and also her superior and Tim's superior, who's now the president of the company. I interviewed with them virtually once. I got the chance, fortunately, to interview again in person. I drove down to Maryland from Connecticut, did a little tryout in their studio to show all the skills that I had kind of gained over the years in broadcasting. And then I ended up signing the contract down here in late July. So it was a couple months from May to July last year, finalizing that. And I've been here now over half a year, over 7 months, which is pretty crazy. So that's how I got this opportunity at Delmarva Sports Network, my first technical full-time job. But I've been doing broadcasting for a long time, fortunately, since really my freshman and sophomore year of high school. Obviously, that was more a volunteer opportunity through our high school TV station, but that's where my love for broadcasting really began. But obviously, you asked me, how did I get this opportunity at Delmarva Sports Network? And that's how I'm finally getting my feet wet in the real world.
Oh, that sounds amazing. What does a typical game day look like for you from preparation to going on air?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Here at DSN, commentating live sporting events is only a part of the job. It's honestly my favorite part of the job because I don't think you can replicate the experience of being at a game live and feeding off the crowd and the players and the coaches, and I could go on and on about that. But typically for a game day, at least since I started down here at Delmarva Sports Network, the first thing I'll do is either have a quick phone conversation with the head coaches of the other teams. A lot of the sports that we cover down here are either high school sports, so we can get in touch with the coaches through, the high school's athletic directors, or college sports. So we would reach out to each school's sports information director for that team that we're covering that day and have a chance to catch up with the head coach if they've got a little bit of time. I like to talk to the coaches before the game, really just like any broadcaster should. I mean, at the highest levels, they set up those production meetings, as they call it, on national TV for you. But, in college, in high school, and even here at my first job, you kind of have to do that for yourself if you want to hear from the coaches. And the coaches are always going to have those stories that the stats or the newspaper articles written about their team couldn't tell you. It's good to, throughout the course of a game day, refresh yourself on those articles and read up on the top players on each team, whatever they have online. But I definitely try to get in touch with the coaches. And if I've done it before game day, hopefully, then maybe I'll go back and re-listen one more time, take more in detailed notes, just to try to commit it to memory, the really important things that the coach said about their team. And and then maybe I'll write some stuff down in my notes app on my iPhone, and then I'll end up scribbling it down on my spotting boards for the game. So I try to get to the game, an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game. I'm now traveling with a production crew. It's not just me, so I usually go with a few other people to these games. And maybe I'm listening to the coach's call in the back of the car on the way there. Hopefully, I'm not driving. Sometimes I try to make sure I'm not driving on the way to a game so that I can really try to maximize that time building up to the game, refresh myself on the storylines, and make sure I've got things written down that I want written down. I'm communicating with the producers and the directors that I work with throughout the day to make sure that our pregame show looks good because we have a pregame show for every broadcast. I'm making sure that I understand if we have any spots, which is just a fancy word for ad breaks or ad reads, that I know what those are going into the day so that we make sure that we can execute on those well during the game and that those companies are paying good money now in the real world to sponsor their product on our airwaves and on our TV. So I got to make sure I get that right. And then I'm just trying to be really calm, cool, and collected before the game. I've realized over time that less is more for me, at least written. And I don't want to overwhelm myself with notes that I have to look at during the game. It's good to have it there in case you forget about an important stat or a player tidbit in the moment, but I don't want to overwhelm myself looking at this jargon chicken scratch while I have to call the game. I want to be calm. I don't want to be rushing, cramming, headed into the game. I want to feel like, you know what? I prepped as much as I possibly could, given everything else that's going on with my job, with all the other responsibilities that I have to balance, and just trying to have a normal life. I feel good. I've got experience, I've got confidence in myself, and things are going to go well. And then I just try to loosen up my partner, have a little bit of fun before the game, during the game, make sure that, people at home can feel like we're actually good friends, which we are, and that really shines through on the air. Make sure they're comfortable, make sure they're ready to go, and we call the game.
That's amazing, man. What skills and advice do you have for someone trying to break into the sports broadcasting right now?
Whew. Yeah, definitely. A question I've been super fortunate to try and answer a lot over the years. Again, as I said earlier, I got really lucky that, I went to a public high school with such a strong broadcasting program. I kind of just fell into it. I mean, sure, I had to put in the work to get better. And I reached out, and I still do, to a lot of people who are veterans in this industry to try to pick their brains, right? Um, but we had a lot of great equipment. We had a lot of people who knew what they were doing, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. I had a great teacher who pushed me. I mean, he literally said, "You want to broadcast the football games here at our high school, right? Well, you should quit the football team then." And I'm like, "What? I love playing football. I wasn't good at it, but I loved being on the team." But he's like, "But this is what you really want." And he knew that. He could tell. And ever since I made that decision after my sophomore year of high school to go all in on broadcasting, I was just super fortunate not only to get support from my teachers and my peers, but the community. I fell in love with the profession. They supported me. They saw my passion for it. I got into, in my mind, the top sports communication school in the country. Um, so that was unbelievable. And the resources and the connections that I had the chance to build there just again made my job a lot easier. I had to put in the work, but you know, there was a path. There was a clear path to success. Um, so I give a lot of credit to kids who don't go to high schools or even don't go to colleges with big broadcasting programs. I mean, now in my job, I work with multiple people. We live in Salisbury, Maryland. There's a pretty big university here, Salisbury University, and they've got a broadcasting program. But from what I've heard from my colleagues, yes, it's a good foundation. Because I have some colleagues who did graduate from Salisbury, but they still had there was a lot they didn't have to work with, and they had to kind of go out and create those opportunities for themselves. So I think if you're just starting out, make sure to take advantage of all the technology at your fingertips, right? I've gotten that advice a lot. Your phone is now an outlet to get your opinion on sports out. Your computer, like we're doing right now, we're recording a Zoom together, and you could easily create a podcast out of this, and you could post that on your social medias and build your brand and build your confidence and gain reps. So I think my biggest thing, I mean, it all started for me. Um, when I was literally just broadcasting New York Giants games to myself while I was watching the game. So don't be afraid to, you know, get reps any way you can, whether you're alone, whether you're, shooting it out to the world, or you're just training by yourself and maybe getting feedback. So don't be afraid to create your own opportunities, right? Just because somebody's not handing it to you on a silver platter doesn't mean you can't do it. Don't be afraid to listen to your own work and to critique your own work and to have other people critique your work that you trust. You have to be your harshest critic. You do have to believe that you're good. You have to trick yourself into thinking that you're good. You have to have a little, confidence in yourself, but you have to be receptive to the fact that you can always get better. Um, and just be ready for one heck of a profession, right? It's unique. We work when everyone else plays, literally. We are working sporting events and everyone else is just there as a fan. So you have to be prepared for the reality of the situation that if you want to work a 9 to 5, and again, this maybe isn't exactly the advice that a 16 or 17-year-old needs to hear just starting out, or even a young college kid, but it's just the reality of the situation that my job, I work from early afternoon to late night, like 11, 12, 1 in the morning. Um, so just be ready for that, if you love sports, if you love talking sports, if that's just such a strong part of your personality, but you feel like you want to try to turn it into a profession, which is exactly what I wanted to do, it's awesome. And I've still got buddies in high school who say, I can't believe you're still doing it. And I'm like, I know. It's pretty cool, isn't it? That I stuck with it. But at the same time, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's a really unique field. So I think just kind of be ready for that reality. Because if you're not, then you're quickly probably going to lose interest in it. But if you understand what you're getting yourself into, it's totally worth it.
That's an awesome answer. Next, let's dive into the ethical dilemmas. Have you ever faced an ethical dilemma while covering a team or game, and what happened?
For sure. I think one that comes to mind for me since I've taken the job here at Delmarva Sports Network is our company has a pretty strong policy, at least from our live event production, that if an athlete gets injured, especially at the high school level, we don't show it. So, just because, we don't need the kid, the community. I mean, sure, we're going to talk about it maybe a little bit just because, like, why is there a stoppage in the game? Where did that player go? We wouldn't be doing our job if we were broadcasting a game and starting quarterback, gets hit hard and leaves the game, disappears, and we don't acknowledge it. Um, but, there was definitely a high school football broadcast that I did earlier this year, or at 2025, earlier, I guess, this high school calendar year, where a kid suffered a pretty nasty lower body injury. The ambulance had to come out on the field, and it led to a long stoppage. And we were on the air the whole time. So, kind of balancing well, we're not showing the injury, but well, here's what's happening, trying to give updates, right? Without seeing it. Not trying to kind of overstep in that situation. And you want to be detailed, but if it's something that's serious that's happening, then you want to respect everybody involved. Um, and I think another thing that you even did it at the beginning of this interview. You made sure to clarify with me we're recording this chat. I talk to a lot of players, I talk to a lot of coaches, and if I have the chance to catch up with any of them, always have to clarify, maybe they'll clarify this is on the record, this is off the record. Technically, once you start talking to me and I've told you I'm recording, everything is on the record, even if you say it's off the record. But I think you just want to pick and choose your battles,
Yep.
right? I mean, of course, everyone wants a big scoop. Everyone wants to break the news of a coach retiring or a player being out, whatever. Um, but again, a lot of the connections that we have are high school connections, and those are kind of fragile, right? With parents being protective of their children and schools not wanting to overshare information about their student athletes. You just got to understand the reality of your situation.
So this
So yeah,
connects to, have you ever had to report or comment on something negative about a team or player, and how did you handle it?
I have, right? And honestly, that's a lesson I've had to learn since I've come down here. And a lesson that I always kind of have to remind myself because I don't ever want to sound disingenuous. I want to sound like myself. I want to be real with the audience. I think that's a really important part of my style. But I've had times down here where I've written an article headline, I don't know, Delmar destroys Salisbury Christian 52 nothing. 52 nothing score. They got destroyed. But, I had my bosses tell me, can we be a little more conscious of the language we're using? These are high schoolers. And even if I'm calling a game and I'm like, three ball goes up, and it's nowhere close. I mean, because, shot making at the high school level in basketball, it's not what it is in college and in the pros. And, my bosses are like, yeah, that's a little harsh. I mean, I want to make sure I'm basing everything in truth, right? You don't want to make up lies, rumors. That's just not good journalism. That's not good practice. That's not what we're doing here. But if something happens, I'm going to call it as I see it. So I think and I even had to learn that lesson in college. I was trying, at Syracuse, one of the best opportunities you can have as an underclassman is to work for the ACC network, which is the conference. ACC is a conference that, Syracuse athletics is in. And we have the chance to broadcast as students a lot of their smaller sports that don't end up going on national television on ACC Network Extra, pretty much ESPN Plus. And the professor of practice that kind of trains up the underclassmen to put them in a position to go on the air and be confident in them to do the job in a professional setting. Midway through my sophomore year, I showed him a segment I did for our student TV station where we were kind of joking around about reasons why Syracuse basketball players were underperforming. Oh, he's homesick. Oh, he's got the flu. Oh, like we were just kind of I guess kind of being a little mean because, we were just kids. We were just, as a student TV station, no one's really watching. I thought it showed off my personality. He said, how can I trust you to go on the air and talk about these student athletes in a professional setting if you're just ragging on them like this? And I was like, well, that's for the student TV station. That was jokey. That we would never be doing anything like that in a professional setting. But it's always a good reminder, right? Like, think about what you're going to say before you're going to say it. I think as a kid who grew up in this, I mean, I'm an adult, but as somebody who grew up in the digital age, I am a little desensitized, as are all of us, because social media is just a vacuum for a lot of bad things to be spread very easily. So I think maybe that as a result, I'm a little harsh at times. But you don't want it to start ruining with your reputation, especially with the athletes and the coaches, because if they think of it, you're just a jerk, for a lack of a better term. They're not going to want to tell you their story. And that's why I'm there. I'm there to tell their story in my style in the hope that it makes it a little more memorable for everybody involved. So you don't want to burn those bridges by being a little unethical in a way.
Yep. So this leads into the last segment, which is breaking down the specific story or broadcast in this case. So I watched your coverage of the Delaware Bluecoats versus the Maine Celtics. And can you walk me through how you prepared for that broadcast first?
Sure. You know, that's a new partnership that we have this year here at Delmarva Sports Network. So very lucky. The G League is not an easy one to find opportunities in. There aren't that many teams um, compared to minor league baseball, where there's multiple tiers of their minor league. So, unfortunately, we didn't have the chance to catch up with the coaches beforehand. Maybe I could have done a better job there. But it just felt like the Delaware Bluecoats, we aren't their only, like they have their own team broadcast. We're kind of like an outside affiliate jumping in and broadcasting the game ourselves. So I figured that I wasn't really going to have the chance to catch up with their head coach, nor catch up with the other team's head coach that you mentioned. I believe you said the Maine Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, so.
Um, so, unfortunately, I didn't have the chance there to catch up with those guys. What's easier about preparing a game for a professional broadcast compared to a high school broadcast is there's just a lot more information on these pro players. I mean, especially, the person I live with down here is a colleague of mine. We have the same position. He's a huge college basketball fan. So, I actually, the first game that I broadcasted for the Delaware Bluecoats, I was actually his analyst. But then the next game, 2 days later, the game you're talking about, then I took the lead as the play-by-play broadcaster. So I was very fortunate that I could really hear him kind of walk through like, oh, and this guy was on that New Mexico State team that upset blah blah blah, and this guy was this, and this guy was that, and I'm like, well, there we go. That's already kind of started the gears turning in my head. Just listening. You got to be a good listener in this profession. As an interviewer, as a non-air talent, period. You have to be a good listener. So, if he said something interesting about the players on the court, I tried to put it to memory. And then after that, I go online, I double check the information, I gain more context around the things that he had mentioned the night before. Um, I go to the G League website. I look at the stats for a game-to-game basis. I scrolled through, the recent articles that were released by both the main team and the Delaware team, reading them to myself out loud, taking screenshots in my phone of interesting stats and facts and information that they dropped about the teams and in the games that they had played against each other previously. So, pretty similar to how I prepare any other game outside of the fact that I didn't have the chance, it's a professional setting. I can't just go up and say, "How you doing, Janai Broom? How's life?" They're probably gonna say, "Get away from me." I'm a professional. So there's a little bit more of a barrier, because it's just a little bit more of a professional setting. But there was just more information on each guy because a lot of these guys were the top player at great colleges for basketball across the country. So there was no shortage of storylines and information, and it definitely helped, calling a game in a professional setting. That information was much more accessible to me. Even when I got to the arena a couple hours before the game, there's these big, thick packets of, game notes, last matchup, season stats, season storylines, whatever, league news. I mean, I didn't have time to flip through the whole thing, and a lot of it is just kind of fooey, for lack of a better term. I'm never going to use this, but there's still stuff in there that's good. And I made sure to be conscious of that before the game.
Yup. And how much of your broadcast is planned ahead of time versus improvised in that moment?
Um, well, every that's a good question. I mean, in terms of play-by-play broadcasting, what I say is really all ad lib. You can't. That's the awesome part about play-by-play, and that's why it's so difficult. Um, you just have to go up there and you have to perform. I mean, sure, you can kind of structure how you want to start a game, how you want to introduce the characters on the court, right? And they get the ball to Kennedy Chandler. Might remember him from that Tennessee Vols team back in 2022, where he was on the All SEC first team, right? I can have an idea of what I want to say about these guys early in the game so that the audience is like, oh yeah, I do remember that guy. Or, oh wow, that's a pretty good player right there, right? That's my job, is to weave in the storylines of the game early on and to still remind people about what's important and what's at stake later in the game. But outside of that, it's all ad lib, right? I don't know. I mean, I know people joke more often than not these days that these games are scripted. They're not scripted. You can't script live sports. It's too difficult. But that's what I love is the unpredictable nature of it. So, sure, there are certain elements of the broadcast that might be a little scripted, like our pregame show is scripted. Not scripted, but like I might script my opening call, right? The introduction of the broadcast. We welcome you into the Chase Fieldhouse, where tonight big postseason implicate. Like I might script the 15 or 20-second welcome to the game. Here's what you need to know. Some people might script the final call, right? If it's like let's say the head coach of the Delaware Bluecoats, if they win the game, it would be his 100th career win. I don't know. I'm just making up a random accolade. I might maybe some people would want a script. And for Coach Clark, it's 100 career wins, the winningest coach in Delaware program history. I don't know. Some people might want to script that fully. Some people might just script the fact, bank a fact, and then build the call, the moment around that. I think that works better for me. I don't like to, because once you start to script it and read it, you can almost feel that I'm reading it, even if, it might sound good, but it will feel forced. So, to answer your question, from my perspective, what I say on the air, 99% of it is unscripted. And I'm fine with that. And if it sounds a little clunky or a little or a little loose or a little like I don't know how to really describe that, but if it sounds a little, I want to sound natural. If I sound a little like I don't know where I'm going, it's because I don't know where I'm going, right? I'm figuring it out. I'd rather be that version of myself than this bogged down robot version of myself that doesn't sound like a normal person. Um, so I mean, I know like in basketball there are media timeouts, right? So like I know there will be scheduled breaks and we have to hit all these breaks in a certain order. I get a break sheet handed to me by our director before the game so that I know when we have to go to breaks, how long those breaks will be. So I know that exists. But in terms of what I'm actually saying on the air for a live game that I'm doing commentary of, most of it is not scripted.
All right, and the last question will be, looking back, is there anything you would have done differently or improved in this broadcast?
Ooh, that's a good question. I've definitely tried to make sure that I watch back at least the first half of all the games that I do. Um, I mean, in high school, I did a much better job of that, getting through the whole game and charting the moments that I liked, the moments that I didn't like. Now I just don't have as much time. Um, what would I do differently? I'll say this. Um, there was a main Celtic player. His name is Max Shulga, and he ended up lighting it up. Had like 25, 27 points, made huge threes at the end of the game that decided the game in favor of me. I think it was a 1 point game. Um, but he made the difference. And he didn't play the game prior where I was the analyst, so I didn't really get a chance to see him. And maybe I underestimated his impact he would have on the game. And I feel like I probably could have done a maybe bit of a better job of, of introducing him earlier so that when he started popping off later in the game, it was like, oh, there he is, right? Like for the audience, like, oh, yep, this, Ian told me, this guy told me that this guy was a guy to watch out for, and I can see why. He's a great shooter. So I wish I did a better job maybe of introducing that storyline, it just kind of hitting it over the head. Because just because you say it once doesn't mean, I mean, a lot of people don't watch a game from the start of the first quarter to the end of the fourth quarter. They have other things to do. So you have to continue to hit it over the head of like maybe heading into the second half, I could have said, and Max Shulga, top scorer on the year for the Celtics, only has 4 points right now. Let's see if he heats up. Something along those lines, right? Just to be like, hey, he's still here, right? Feel like I probably could have maybe done a better job of warning, alerting the audience that this was a player to watch out for.
Yeah, now he's on the Celtics.
Yeah, I saw your eyes light up. I know you're right there in the
Yep.
trenches. So he earned his spot.
Yup. And is there anything else that I left out that you would give advice to upcoming sports broadcasters or journalists?
Great question. I always make sure to ask every person I interview that. So you're doing all the right things. Because you never know what people are thinking about. Um, Whew, I don't know. I mean, I think this is an awesome profession, despite days where I get frustrated. Um, but and I say that only because I've been, I know I've only technically been in this business for half a year, but really for me, this has been my life for 8 to 10 years. Um, be proud of this profession if you want to go into it, right? I think a lot of people these days, in my opinion, they kind of hide that they're broadcasters. Oh, well, this is my life separate of broadcasting, and this is my broadcasting life. And I'm like, why? Are you ashamed? Do you think it's nerdy? Do you think it's weird? I don't know. Maybe this isn't super practical advice. Maybe this is just an old man, an old spirited 22-year-old man kind of ranting. But you really got to love this. So, if you want to do this, just like hustling in multiple organizations, doing a lot of your work for free, just because you love it, right? So again, kind of just another reminder that you really, in order to get to where you want to be, right? Because a lot of people can just be in the industry, in front of the camera, behind the camera. But if you really have goals of shooting super high and trying to broadcast national level sports, high level college sports, international sports, it's a grind. And a lot of it is luck. Um, you can control what you can control and you can get better, but you still need somebody to give you an opportunity. I still needed my buddy Tim Nolan to put in a good word for me in my mind. Maybe that's me just putting myself down to get this job. And I had worked so hard for 6 to 7 years before I got to the professional world to carve out an opportunity for myself. And I still needed a helping hand to get in. That's just a reality of the situation. So you got to be all the way in. This is not a job where you go to school, you do the classes, you leave, you hang out with your friends, you go back to class, you get the degree, and then somebody gives you a job. You have to make this a large part of your life. Um, I'm not scaring anybody away. I love having conversations like this because I love this profession. And I hope that we can continue to find people who are in it for the right reasons because they love sports and it's just such a large part of their lives. So make sure to reach out to people, even if you're intimidated by them or their following or how good they are in your mind. Reach out to people in the industry because they want to share these stories as well. They want to share their advice. They want to pass it on. And thanks for listening to me ramble on about it because I could do it for days. And you need to have that kind of passion if you want to make a career for yourself in sports broadcasting.
Thank you so much, Ian. I really appreciate it.
Of course, James, thanks for having me.
Yep.